Hey, Indy, wake up! For real! Damaris Dantas, nah, she's done. It's over. It's a wrap. Out for the season.
You know, she's a connector, and her personality, and she's a great communicator. She's a vet. Miss her ability to stretch the floor on the floor. She can knock down a shot.
Done for the year. The knife came out Monday, and honestly, Indiana's front office saw this coming from a mile away. They watched the rehab drag on, watched the pain stick around, watched every test come back worse than the last one. And still, deadline day came and went with 0 moves while other teams loaded up. That's not rotten luck, folks. That's a front office falling asleep at the wheel. And every fan who's been shouting about this for weeks just got proven right in the worst way possible.
Out for the season.
You know, she's a connector, and her personality, and she's a great communicator. She's a vet. Miss her ability to stretch the floor on the floor. She can knock down a shot. She can give us a different look from that position as well.
Will she not be with you guys at all the rest of the way with this?
I'm not sure. I think it'll probably depend on what her recovery looks like.
When did this happen? How did this happen? Has she been
Read between those lines for a second. Rehab wasn't working. In plain English, they knew surgery was coming before the deadline even hit. They knew Dantas wasn't walking through that door again this season. They knew Aaliyah Boston had no real backup behind her. And Stephanie White stood right there at that podium, talking about staying in her lane, while the window to fix this thing slammed shut for good. This isn't a case of hindsight being 20/20ths. Fans were begging for a move. Analysts were pointing out the hole in that roster. The warning signs weren't subtle, they were flashing in neon.
Still had Justine Passat. Oh, well, that would require a competent front office. Yeah, that means we can reclaim some money to sign someone. Let's see. Seriously. The Fever Dark Side are calling for a vote of no confidence against the Indiana Fever front office. Wow. So the morons covering the Fever couldn't report this.
And here's the part that really stinks. This is the player they picked over Justine Passat. Remember that call back in the offseason? Indiana let a healthy, productive guard walk out the door. Someone who could actually give them real minutes. And the reasoning never changed. Dantas brings veteran leadership. She stretches the floor. She's great in the locker room. Fine, maybe all of that's true. But here's what's also true. She played 0 playoff games before that surgery. 0. Meanwhile, Passat's out there producing for somebody else, and Indiana's left with Raven Johnson as their one and only backup guard.
Just in, Caitlin Clark is your WNBA Eastern Conference Player of the Week for the 3rd time this season. Let's just take a look. 25.7 a game, 53.7 field goal percentage, 9 assists, 5 rebounds. By the way, guys, there was a triple-double in there. There was a double-double in there. Way to go, Caitlin. Keep it going. Atta girl, you own it, CC. Look at the stats. Numbers don't lie. Congrats, CC. Let's go, Caitlin. 3rd time's a charm.
3 times now. That's Caitlin Clark's 3rd Eastern Conference Player of the Week award this season. 25.7 points a game that week. Better than 53% shooting from the field. 9 assists a game. 5 boards. A triple-double in there, a double-double too. She is doing everything a human being can possibly do to drag this franchise into relevance. And what's the front office doing to back her up? They just lost their backup center for the rest of the year and did nothing about it. Nothing. They're asking a rookie to carry a roster that keeps getting thinner by the week.
A team that has already been exposed. Look, we knew the Indiana Fever was going to beat the hell out of the Seattle Storms and all these trash bag teams, right? Of which there's a lot in the WNBA of said trash bag teams. They were going to whip the shit out of those teams. It was going to be the Minnesota Lynxes of the world that you got to get past to win a title, and they got their ass handed to them.
Brace yourself, because what just happened to Indiana should scare every single fan of this franchise. Minnesota didn't just beat this team. They tore the mask off and showed the entire league exactly how to break the Fever. This wasn't a close game. This was a blueprint. And now every contender left in this race is sitting in a film room, rewinding that tape and taking notes. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. You can stomp on the bottom of the standings all season long. You can pile up points against teams that have already packed it in for the year. But the second you run into a real contender, one with size in the paint, bodies to rotate, legs that are still fresh in the fourth quarter, and a coaching staff that knows exactly where to attack, that's when a thin roster stops being a minor issue and starts being a season-ending problem. And nobody's saying Caitlin Clark isn't doing her job. She is. Every single night, she's doing everything a rookie possibly can. So the real question has to be asked: how long can the lack of size and depth on this roster keep getting away with it before it costs them everything? Because it already did. It cost them on Sunday. And if nothing changes, it's going to keep costing them right through the stretch run. Let's talk about time, because time is the one thing nobody in that front office seems to be treating with any urgency. Dan Marino got to a Super Bowl in year 2 of his career. Everybody assumed he'd be back. He never was. Not once. Jim Kelly made it to 4 straight Super Bowls and walked away with nothing to show for it. Championship windows do not stay open out of kindness. They slam shut, and they don't wait around for a front office to get its act together. Believing Caitlin Clark will get 10 more shots at a title is exactly the kind of lazy thinking that wastes a generational player. This season mattered. Next season will matter just as much. Every single year matters. And right now, this organization is not acting like it understands that. So who's backing up Aaliyah Boston? Go ahead, try to answer that. There isn't one. Nobody. And the front office knew this was a possibility and still did nothing when the trade deadline came and went. That's not misfortune. That's flat-out incompetence. And when you push back and ask, well, what were they supposed to do at the deadline? The answer is simple: their job. Their actual job. It takes a functioning scouting department and people who know what they're doing to make a move happen. Were there truly 0 guards on the market? Not one available body. Something isn't adding up here, and fans can feel it. Just look at how supporters are reacting. These aren't casual fans tuning in for the highlights. These are people who've poured their time, their money, and their emotional investment into this franchise, and they are openly calling for accountability at the top. They want answers on how this injury got this bad while Dantas wasn't even seeing the floor. They're calling out anyone covering the team who won't ask the hard questions and would rather protect the organization than report the truth. When your own fan base starts throwing around words like incompetent and total failure, that's not just noise. That's a trust problem, and trust problems don't fix themselves. The trade deadline wasn't some ambush. Everybody in the league had that date circled weeks in advance. The smart franchises used it to patch holes, add bench depth, and get playoff ready. This franchise used it to do nothing at all. And don't even bring up the excuse that nobody saw the surgery coming. The head coach herself has already gone on record admitting the rehab wasn't producing results. That's not a sudden collapse. That's a slow bleed everyone could see happening in real time, and somebody was supposed to be watching it. Here's what makes all of this so hard to swallow. This isn't just a front office failing to build a team around Caitlin Clark. They're actively working against her. Letting Justine Pesit leave wasn't addition by subtraction. It was subtraction, plain and simple, with nothing added back. Trading depth away and replacing it with an empty roster spot isn't a plan. It's neglect. And now, if Aaliyah Boston picks up 2 quick fouls in the first half, there's no real answer coming off that bench. Opposing coaches know it, and they will hunt that mismatch relentlessly. Now sit with everything Caitlin Clark has still managed to do despite all of this. Historic rookie numbers. Television ratings the league hasn't seen in years. Sold-out arenas on the road, night after night. Highlight after highlight running on every sports show in the country. And how did the front office respond to landing a talent like this? By handing her the thinnest roster in the entire league and just hoping things work out. That's not a strategy. That's crossing your fingers and calling it a plan. Minnesota wasn't a one-off. It was a warning shot. Every single contender in this league just watched exactly what happens in a 7-game series against this roster. You cannot lean on 5 players for 40 minutes a night and expect to win it all. You cannot afford to have one single injury unravel your entire year. You cannot walk into the playoffs with holes this obvious and expect nobody to exploit them. Minnesota didn't reinvent basketball to win that game. They just played big, rotated fresh legs, and let this roster run out of gas on its own. And here's the question that should be keeping people up at night in that front office. What happens if Aaliyah Boston goes down next? What happens if Caitlin Clark turns an ankle? This roster has no cushion left. They are one bad step away from total disaster. And that is not what championship-level roster building looks like. That's hoping nothing else breaks. Losing their backup big for the year didn't create this problem. It just ripped the curtain back on a problem that was already there. This roster has always been too thin to hang with the league's best, and the people in charge of fixing that either didn't see it coming or simply didn't care enough to act. And every day that passes, that decision looks worse. Nobody's arguing that letting a healthy, productive player walk away made this team a champion overnight if she'd stayed. But she was steady. She could give real minutes without hurting you on either end of the floor. This team had that. They let her go. They replaced her with absolutely nothing. And now the bill has come due. In a well-run organization, that's the kind of decision that gets people fired. And when the head coach talks about staying in her lane, that rings especially hollow right now. You're the one running this team. You have a say in how this roster gets built. Nobody understands what this group needs better than you do. So watching that deadline pass without a single move being made and calling it staying in your lane isn't restraint. That's standing by while the organization fails in real time. The coaches who actually win titles don't just quietly accept whatever roster gets handed to them. They push. They speak up. They demand the front office does its job. All the talk about culture and chemistry starts sounding pretty empty once you're getting run off the floor by any team with real size. Good vibes in the locker room are nice. Veteran leadership matters. But you know what matters more? Having enough capable bodies to actually run a real rotation. You can have the best chemistry in the league and still lose a series in 5 games if the other team is simply deeper and better than you. This is exactly where the Dan Marino comparison lands so hard. One of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play, in the Super Bowl by year 2, and the front office around him never built a real contender again. They wasted a generational talent because they couldn't put a complete roster together. This team is walking that same exact path right now. They have a generational player capable of carrying an offense on her back, and they've surrounded her with a roster that can't absorb one single injury to a backup player. The fans raising the alarm aren't overreacting. They've seen this story before, and they know exactly how it ends if nothing changes. But it feels like this front office is determined to learn that lesson the hard way, riding this thin roster into the playoffs, watching it get picked apart by the first real contender they face, and acting shocked when the season ends early. And Caitlin Clark walks away 1 year older, with one less shot at a championship than she should have had. So here's where this leaves us. This injury isn't bad luck catching up to a good team. It's poor roster planning finally catching up to a franchise that had every chance to fix it and chose not to. The lack of depth wasn't hidden. It's been obvious since training camp. And doing nothing about it at the deadline wasn't an accident. That was a choice. If you're a fan of this team, you have every right to be furious right now. But being angry in the comments isn't enough. Make your voice heard. Keep pushing for accountability. And don't let this front office quietly move on like nothing happened. Share this. Talk about it. Demand better. Because a talent like this doesn't come around twice. And neither does a wasted championship window.